Hello. Welcome to the daily discussion with your host, this guy.
You ain't got no money,
Just in general, there's a huge paradigm shift when it comes to the workplace. And a lot of it is the new generation, from millennials to Gen Y, Gen Z. A lot of these changes, I think, are pretty good. Now, over time, communication has become very, very simple, right? Especially with tools like Slack, Trello, Skype, Google+, Zoom, Uber Conference, Basecamp. Now, all of these platforms have provided ways for companies to be able to essentially make their processes more efficient, right? Whether it be communication, whether it be project management. Now, in an article in the Wall Street Journal, there's this cool quote that I found that basically said, Slack's biggest selling point is that it's an email killer. Now, emails are annoying. I know you know what I mean. And especially emails in the middle of the workday saying, does anybody want to go to lunch? Now, think about all those emails that you would have to dig through and personally select each one that isn't relevant to you, throw them in your trash. That is a pretty tedious process. And what Slack has been able to do is pretty much eliminate all of that, because now instead of sending an email chain, a person can just go to the Slack channel and say, hey, anybody go to lunch? And everybody's okay with that. Now, Trello and Basecamp have provided a platform for project teams to be able to manage their projects a lot easier. And also we have Zoom and Uber Conference making conference calls so much simpler to conduct. Now, with all of this, I think the most important thing about communication changing in the workplace is that communication in the workplace is just going to keep getting simpler and simpler and simpler. And I think it brings a valid point as to how far we can bring it. Now, to my next point. Now, internal communication is definitely one of the things that have changed in the workspace, but the workplace itself is also changing. Now, there's no more need for the cubicle. Like, cubicles are a thing of the past, right? And a lot of times now what we've been finding is that millennials especially, they want to work remotely. 68% of job seekers who are millennials said an option to work remotely would greatly increase their interest in specific employers. Now, I don't know about you, but if I had the option to work remote, I'd probably do it. Now, today, in terms of workspace, workers have a lot of options. They can work remote, or they can do this thing called hoteling. Now, hoteling is when and this is a lot of times in the case for employees that have to travel a lot. And so basically what hoteling is when an employee just doesn't have a set desk, so they just find anywhere else to do their work, kind of like in a library when you go and study. Like if you go study in the Ugly or if you go study in Hatcher, there's desks, but you don't have an assigned desk. You just find a space that works for you. That's pretty much what hoteling is for one office. And so a lot of times employees can go to share another desk with someone else, or they can go to the company bar and just do their work there. They can go to the kitchen and do their work there. Now, the last thing I want to hit on for this video is the focus of a lot of companies nowadays on company culture. Now, company culture is pretty much, at least in this case, the perks, the unpaid perks that employees get when they work for a company. So a good example is Google's 20% rule. Another way to build company culture is actually by like the food you have. I mean, people want to eat snacks, right? When I was at Instacart, yeah, so culture is a huge thing. In a lot of companies' pasts, culture was not the main focus. It was bottom line revenue, right? But when a company adds their people to the bottom line, then I think it just makes for a really great company. And I'm happy that that is where we are headed. Now, with that being said, let's conclude. Now, all three of these changes, all of these major changes, are ways that companies are evolving. These companies that are doing and implementing all of these changes are on the cusp of innovation. And with all of these different changes that are happening in the workplace, in your workplace, you're changing in the right ways. Thank you.
You ain't got no money, I ain't